Record this. All right. So everybody, wave to your brethren who are not as dedicated as you. All right. So we're going to be because I'm recording this for people, it's going to be a little bit different in that normally I try to move around as much as possible, and I'm going to try to be as kind of succinct as possible because when you're watching a video, it's different than being in a class. And I'm going to be kind of sitting here while I do it. Everybody logged into NetLabs? Moises?
No, not yet.
The first thing, log into NetLabs. We're going to be looking at that. So we are going on to Module 6 Linux Utilities. And the truth is there's nothing here that we haven't, actually no, there are things we haven't done before, but we're really just building on the stuff we've already done for the most part. I have a PowerPoint here, and mostly I just use it as a list of, as a reminder to myself of the things that I want to make sure we do today. So we're going to use basic Linux utilities to list files, display text files, copy, move, remove files, display the beginning or the end of a file, search, sort, print, categorize, compare text files, compress, decompress, and archive files, count the number of letters, words, and lines in a file. By the way, so the only person here who's in the NCL is Chris, right? But we were just talking about a lot of the tools we're going to learn today are very useful for log analysis, right? The cut and grep and word count, a lot of those ones where they're like, okay, how many times did this IP address hit you? Right? Word count and grep can answer those questions. We're going to locate utilities on the system, change the modification times of a file, display information about users and system, and record a session in the file and edit text files. All right. So everybody log into NetLabs. Let's go ahead and go to Ubuntu, and it's NetLab 123. Boop-de-doo. And I'm gonna undock it and maximize. Do. And eventually, I'll bring up a terminal, which again I will maximize and. There we go. Everybody with me? Okay. I think to make this a little bit easier to read, I'm going to change my prompt to just be ::space, right? Just to make it a little bit easier to read so that the commands display on the screen. All right, first thing, what do I always want to know?
Who am I?
How do I check that?
Who am I?
Who am I? Again, they're not creative people. Where am I?
PWD.
PWD. And? LS. What do I see, right? Imagine yourself playing Zork. Who am I? Where am I? What do I see? Right? So this is what we would expect to see. I'm in my home directory, and I have the regular files there, right? So we're going to keep going through the command lines. So cat, date, echo are some of the ones that we're going to get with right now. So that I have a file to play around with, I'm going to copy the /etc pass wd. You guys are using tab, right? Autocomplete. Yes. I'm going to copy that here, right? Copy takes a source and a destination. The source is the /etc/passwd. The destination is my current directory. And now if I type ls, we see password is here, right? How could I display the contents of that file? Cat. There we go. Cat password. Boom, bada boom. What if I wanted to display the contents in a way that I could page through it? Less. Bullseye. Less. Passwd. And I can hit the space bar to keep paging through it and Q to quit. Everybody with me? Okay. Few other commands that we haven't run into yet. Date. What do you think that does? There you go. They're not creative people. Now, if I do date-h, or should we date --help, it'll kind of tell me how I can set the format. You know, if I want to do it, the default is it gives it to me in a way that humans could read, but I could change it so that it's formatted to maybe give me the number of seconds since 1970. What do we call that? Epoch time, right? Epoch time. I can change it so that it's European style. I can have the time or not display the time. I have a lot of options with date. Another command that we need to be familiar with is echo. What does echo do? We've used it.
Yeah, we use it.
Prints it out to standard out. So echo, this is my message. Boom, bada boom, and it prints out this is my message. By itself, not super useful, but if I redirect that into another file, dummy.out, now we see I have dummy.out. If I do cat dummy.out, we see what I echoed, right? We've used less, we've used ls, right? rm, let me go ahead and do rm dummy.out, and it is gone, right? Remove, we've done move, we've done copy. Again, all of this is stuff we've seen before, right? I think even date showed up at some point. We've used copy, so I'm not going to get into that. Cut, diff, file, find, and grep. These are ones that we haven't, well, actually we've used grep, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
We never use it with the font.
well, no, find and grep are two different things. Well, actually, no, we can link those together. But here's what I want to show you, right? So let me show you cut. Man cut. So cut removes sections from each line of files. So I can do it by bytes. I can select characters. I can select different delimiters. I can do the reverse of whatever I tell it to do. If I do, let's say, quit cat, pass WD, pipe it to cut, and say 256. Oh, I think I have to say -B 256. That was interesting. That didn't work the way I expected at all. Did I use cut wrong again? Man cut option file. -B and then the number. Let me try it. Cut -B. Let's try a smaller number. Maybe that number was too big. Let's try 5. And I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to give it a file name option. Pass WD. Okay, what are we looking at? Kind of crazy looking, right?
Yeah.
So I selected, and it kind of goes, it doesn't display it in a format we expect, but I selected the last bytes, or the first bytes of each line in the file. Usually when we use cut, we use the field operator. I'm just showing you another way of using it. So typically we'll do cut -F for field, and then we'll give it a number. And I'm going to say 3 and give it the file name. Oh, no. I have to do -D colon. There we go. So what's it showing us now?
Oh, just the numbers?
Let me do,
First 3, first.
let me do this again. Let me change it. Let me do 6. So what I'm saying is, right? I'm saying, okay, from this file, use this as a delimiter. That is, that separates fields. And I want the sixth field, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh yeah, 6. Is that right?
You should start from 0.
Or do I start counting at 0? Let's test it by changing the field to 0. Okay, so it starts from 1. So this one does start from 1. There we go. But you see how that works?
Yes.
Right? So cut is very useful for any file that is comma separated, or in this case colon separated, or tab separated. You can chop it into pieces by column. And before Excel, that's how you did spreadsheets. So if you wanted to get like the total, so let me show you. Yeah, you would get like that column, and then you would pipe that into another command that would sum it. All right, that's how you do things. Diff. What do you think diff does?
It looked at two text elements and should be a difference of 2 text.
You just used the word I used. Shows you the differences. It compares two files and shows you the differences. So just to kind of, if I was to do, for example, diff./password, compare it to /etc/password, it tells me nothing. Why?
The file the same.
The files are the same, right?
Yep.
If I do echo Happy Halloween, and I add that to my local copy of password, now if I diff them, it tells me, oh yeah, on the one on the left, that's what that greater than symbol there, it's pointing to the left, that one has Happy Halloween, the other one does not. So I'm going to vim my local copy, and I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to say I'm going to call that Daxmon. Now if I diff them, now what's it do? Yeah, it shows me two differences, right? And diff can actually be more complicated because, like, if I inserted a bunch of lines, then maybe everything would match except for the extra lines. Diff can tell you that, hey, if you cut this out, then they match from there out. That's why diff is a very useful thing. Diff allows us to see if things have been altered. This is actually really useful if you're trying to check to see if something's been misconfigured, because almost every Linux utility has a default file that they ship with, right? So if I compare my current configuration to the default configuration with diff, I can see, oh, here are the things I changed, right? So I can know this is probably what broke it. Everybody with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What does file do? What's that?
Checks the file type.
Checks the file type, right? So if I do file star, it will tell me all the different files in my home directory and what they are. I have some ASCII text, and mostly they are directories, right? And I got one deviant binary package. Now, one thing to remember about file, it's kind of just guessing, so it's not always 100% right. It just looks at the first few bytes and tries to figure it out. Some files, it will be wrong. Finding grep, we've already used grep. What does find do?
Locates a file.
Locates file. So
Locates.
if I do man find, this explains it. To be honest with you, the only option you ever use is name. I never use any of the other stuff. You can set it to say I'm only going to go so deep. You can set it to follow a certain, or you do specify a path, but mostly you just use dash name. Yes, Ted.
The difference between find and locate is that locate search to database and find go to all the found one by one.
The difference is don't use locate. Now locate is not on all systems. Find is on all systems, right? And I don't know off the top of my head, is locate a better tool, right? And this is a common thing with Linux, where you'll have multiple tools that do the same thing. Sometimes it's because one replaces the other. Sometimes it's because you just had two different, paths of development, and now people just throw both of them on there. And for find and locate, I don't know. So just use find. And if I do name, yeah. So yeah, command line argument taking me to name. Where's the dash name? There we go. So the default operation uses dash name. Let's try find dash name. Hosts from root. Actually, let me change this. Let me put sudo in front, because if I just do that, I'm gonna get like a ton of errors because I don't have permission to access directories. Lab 1, 2, 3, and I got it backwards. Find from root dash name hosts. So everywhere where it finds hosts, it's going to show up here. Everybody with me?
Yes.
And those are the only ones. Now, what would happen if I do star, star? So obviously a lot of false positives here, but I get a lot more answers if I start using file globbing, right? If I use that.
Everything with the letters HOST.
Yeah, anything that has HOST anywhere in it matches that. Everybody with me? So find, very powerful tool. You use it a lot. Don't forget to use sudo, because otherwise you can't access a bunch of directories. And you get so many errors, it becomes impossible to read. Okay. LPR, I'm not going to do. What does LPR do? Prints files. LPR literally just takes it and turns it into a PostScript file. You guys know what PostScript is?
To my understanding, it is the file that are ready to print without having the application to open it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Adobe, their Adobe Acrobat Reader is like the most downloaded thing in the whole world, right? The reader was really just a way for them to sell PostScript. PostScript was a language for the printer. I don't know if you guys ever remember buying like Microsoft printers. That was a thing in the 90s. Different printers had different languages. Adobe was just a company that had a language called PostScript. So as a way to describe to the printer, here's how I want things to look. And PostScript was the best, but you had to pay Adobe for it. In order to get more people to use PostScript, they came up with Adobe Acrobat, which was just a way to display PostScript files originally, right? So LPR is just a way to take any kind of file and put it into that format to send it to a PostScript printer. That's what it does. So it turns it into that printer language. And now everything supports PostScript. Everybody uses it, so LPR will print on anything. You're going to do that with the labs today. We don't need to get super into it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Yes?
Is PostScript similar to XPS on Windows?
No, XPS might be. I'm not sure exactly what XPS is. I know it is like a language like that. But like I know you can print to an XPS document, but I don't want to say so without knowing more about the Microsoft one. PostScript is like it's a million years old. It's been around since the 80s. You remember the old dot matrix printers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So after dot matrix printers, if you wanted things to look like documents, PostScript was the only thing that you could buy in a regular office. Otherwise, you had to send stuff to like a professional printer, which is why it became very popular. We've used Move. All right, a few other tools. Let me look at a few other tools here. All right, so we have our PassWD file, right? What if I only want to look at the top of it?
You use head.
Head, PassWD. What if I only want to look at the bottom of it?
Tail.
Again, it's very nice that they're not creative people. These things make sense, right? Why would I use tail?
To get
When you need to look at your system log.
Logs. Logs are chronological. So a lot of times something's not working, let me check what just happened. Or let me go see what happened when it first started up. So head. So head and tail are really used for logs. Sort. So sort does exactly what you expect, except not exactly the way you would expect it. Sort can act kind of weird about uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. So if you do man sort, those different options, do I want it to be in dictionary order? Do I want to ignore case? Do I want to use numeric value? Those are all things I can choose here. If you're using sort and it's like, that's not alphabetical at all, probably you're supposed to be using one of these options here. Ted, yeah.
How does the alphanumerical sort work? It's sort the letter. It's sort the A to Z first and then sort the number, or is it the other way around?
So that what you're probably talking about is dictionary order, right? As opposed to numeric sort, right? Which is comparing based on numeric value. If it's comparing based on numeric value, it's comparing based on the ASCII values. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So if it's doing a numeric sort, then uppercase A is going to come before lowercase a, right? Do we see that?
yes.
Numbers are going to come before all of them, right? But also, it'll include any of the, if you get these weird characters, it'll include their numeric value. Where's a space character? You guys see a space?
Yeah, space is 32.
32, there you go, 32. So a space is going to come before everything.
Yeah.
That's usually not what you intend, right? So that's what I'm saying. The default behavior is numeric values, and it goes based on ASCII values, and you don't get what you expect. What you're talking about is alphanumeric. That's what we expect it to do, and that's going to be, numbers first, and then letters, yada, yada, yada. Everybody with me?
And how about special symbol in terms of a alphanumeric?
It ignores those. It just doesn't count them. So it just goes until it just looks at the first alphabetic or numeric character. Doom. We've used touch before, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do. Keep doing that. Great. All right. But have you looked at the man page for touch?
It's to update the timestamp.
It updates the timestamp, but there are a few interesting options there. One is change only access time. What does that mean?
Time that's available. Wow.
Remember, if you look at the inode, you guys remember inodes?
Yeah.
We talked about inodes, right?
We did.
Yeah. So there's the access time, and then there's the modified time, and then there's the change time. So if I use that option, I only change the access time. Why would I want to do that? What is the modify time effect? Backups, right? I only want to back it up if I modified it. So modified time doesn't look at access. Backups don't look at the access time. They look at the modified time. So if I don't care about that, then I only want to change the access time if I don't want to back it up. You know how we do touch with an empty file that creates it? If we wouldn't want it to do that, we would use the -C or -- no create. I can specify the date with a D. I can change only the modification time. This is a very useful one. I can use a reference file. So if I change one file in a directory, but I want to back up I want to change the timestamp of everything, I can set that as a reference file and change everything's time to that. So we've used touch in its most basic sense to say, update the time to now. There's a lot more options. Be aware of them. And then WC. So if I do WC pass WD, what does that mean? It's not super intuitive looking at it, but what would you guess it means?
Word count?
So WC is word count. What does that output mean?
Something about lines and characters and words.
You're on the right track. So lines and then words and then characters. And if I do man WC, it will it tell me that at the end? It doesn't tell me that. Prints the new line count, the word count, and the byte count, right? So it does say that. It would be very useful if it just gave me a header so I could see that, but it doesn't. Now I could also tell it, hey, I only want the bytes or I only want the lines. So for example, if I did WC-L pass WD, now it only tells me the lines, if that's all I'm interested in. Everybody with me? So, and remember, with all of these tools, I can give them the file name or I can pipe in from standard in. For example, let me do cat pass WD. What's something I see a few times? I see false. So I could do grep false pass WD, and it shows me every line that has false, right? And then I could pipe that into word count -L. So I know 13 of those lines, so 13 accounts are have /bin/false as their shell. That's what that means. By the way, what does that mean? /bin/false is their shell. What's that? No. What's your shell when you log in?
My shell? Isn't it system admin?
Nope, that's your user account. But what shell are you using? When
we're using isn't it that?
Bash.
Yeah.
We're using Bash, right? So what would /bin/false be as a shell? It means no shell. It means you cannot log in as this user, right? So these are all accounts that exist, but you cannot log in as them. Let me go ahead and change it and look at the Bash ones. Right? So there are two ones that have Bash. Let me get rid of that. So we see root has Bash as its shell and sysadmin. Those are the only two accounts you can log in as. Although there are 35 lines, what are all the other ones? What is this? Oh, some of them are /bin/sh, which is a generic shell. It could be different kinds of shell, although it's going to end up being Bash. Does this make sense? Okay. So again, we're building off of our tools. So in addition to the tools we have had, we can chain them together. So now I can grep files, pipe that into a word count, or I can sort it. You know, I can grep it and then pipe it into sort. So let me do this and pipe that into sort -A. Oh, I'll just sort it. So now that gives me those 13 accounts in alphabetical order, if I wanted to go in alphabetical order, as opposed to what order is it in by default? in the password file?
Sandy, A to Z.
It's not A to Z.
I think it is the last use.
What's that?
The last use.
No. It's by user ID, right? So you see user ID 107, 108, 109, 110, right? So by default, it's by user ID. But if I wanted to do it by username, I could sort it, right? Or I can grep false, and I could pipe that into cut dash field, and maybe I only want to know their names, right? Dash D colon, and then I could pipe that into sort, right? So I just get their usernames, and then I could do something with that. Do you see how we can chain? So we're adding to our toolbox here. More tools in the toolbox. All right, another common thing that we do is we archive and compress files. Let me do this. Let me do mkdir dummy directory, cd into dummy directory, touch dummy file 1, touch dummy file 2, dummy file 3, make directory deep dummy dir, cd into that, so dumb. There we go. So now I'm going to cd back to my home directory, and if I do ls-R dummy, it shows me that underneath the dummy directory I have a directory called deep dummy, those 3 files, and inside deep dummy I have so dumb. Right? Everybody with me at this point?
Yes.
All right, so I just made some empty files and some empty directories. I might want to turn that into a single file that I could copy or send out over a network or compress, right? The tool we use in Linux is tar. T-A-R. Stands for, no reason you should know this, just asking, Tape Archiver. You guys remember tape? You don't remember tape. None of you remember tape. I don't remember tape. But we used to back things up on tape, right? And actually we still do. It's still the cheapest way to back things up. And it is commonly used. You back things up to tape, and then you send your tapes off to somewhere else. Not as common, but it still does happen. So tar, now in almost every Linux command, I can give it options in any order. Tar is not like that. Tar is old school. Tar is like your grandpa who would whoop you with his belt if you said the word heckin', right? It doesn't play. So you have to do things in a specific order. Dash to tell I'm giving it options, and then what I'm going to do. C if I'm going to create an archive, X if I'm going to extract an archive, T if I'm going to list a table of contents for an archive. So we're going to do C for create, V if we want it to be verbose, which we always do in this class, and then F to tell it I'm going to give you a file. I have to specify I'm going to tell you the file to archive it to. Why? Where does it go by default? To the tape, to a piece of hardware, right? We don't actually put it out to tape anymore, so we always have to use file. And then I give it the file name, and I'm going to call it dummy.tar, and then what I want it to archive, like that. And because I use the V option, it shows me, okay, I'm archiving dummy directory, deep dummy directory, and then so dumb, and then file 1, file 2, file 3. So it shows me in order what it's archiving. That's what the verbose option does for you. If I do that again, and I get rid of the V, it did the same thing, it just didn't tell me it was doing it. Everybody with me? And if I do ls, now see I have a file there called dummy.tar. If I wanted to see what's in that file, Again, tar dash table of contents would be T. Then F for file name, and then dummy.tar, and shows me, okay, this is what's in there. That makes sense? Okay. If I do rm-rf, what's this do, Alejandro?
It forces the remove.
It what?
It forces the remove recursively.
Yes, remove recursively. So if I do that for dummy-dir, what happened? I deleted that directory and everything inside it, right? And it went down as deep as those directories go and just deleted it all. But it's okay because I have an archive of it, so I can get it back. Tar dash, anybody remember what it was for extract? X. And I'm going to be verbose because I want it to tell me what it does while it does it. And then file, tell it dummy.tar. And it tells me it extracted all those. And we see that it did. So it re-extracted those files. So a tape archive just takes a whole bunch of files and directories and puts it into a single file. Right? And in fact, how could I look and see the contents of that archive file? Cat. Right? Let's try less first. So if I do less dummy.tar. Now, in this case, they're all empty files, so there's nothing actually in anything. So it really is just a listing of directories and empty files. But if I had contents in there, it would continue on. Does that make sense? So, tar, take a bunch of files, put them into an archive, right? Now, if I want to compress it, there are a few utilities for it. gzip stands for GNU zip. And I can do gzip.dummy.tar, and if I do ls, it automatically zips it and then adds that gz at the end so I know it's zipped. And if I do file dummy.tar.gz, it tells me, okay, that's a compressed archive. Yes?
In that case, what is the extension of the dummy file?
What do you mean?
After the dot, it tells me that what is the file extension of that file is. Since it has a 2 extension,
well,
what extension would that be?
Point 1, extensions are meaningless in Linux, right? Extensions are like Halloween. If you see somebody wearing a police outfit, that doesn't mean they're a cop. They won't help you, right? So it doesn't matter what the extension is really. It's not like Windows where there are strict rules. I can add 20 extensions. I can, if I do move dummy.tar.gz to dummy.tar.gz.stuff.jimbob, right? I'm allowed to do that. Those extensions really don't have any meaning. gzip by default adds a gz to make it easier for you to look at the directory and see what's going on, but it doesn't really stop anything. Or it doesn't really mean anything. Secondly, it is a gzipped file because when I run the file command, it tells me that's gzip compressed data. That's how I know what it is. And if I do gunzip dummy if I do gunzip / dummy, why is this not working? Oh, so apparently it does matter for gzip, which is interesting. It didn't used to, so they've updated it. So now I got to move it back. Move dummy.tar to. So gzip does want a .gz extension. And now, if I do gunzip, It is now unzipped. It is uncompressed. It doesn't make any difference because the archives are the same size because there's nothing in them, right? But if I had content, gzip is the most efficient compression in the world for text files. There's a lot of patterns you can do with text files that you can't do with binary files, and gzip does really good. Bzip is okay. That's the other one. So if we do bzip to dummy.tar, right, it does the same thing. Have you ever used a compression tool in Windows?
Yeah.
What have you used?
WinRAR.
WinRAR, WinZip, 7-zip. Now, all those things do is they take the two parts, creating an archive and compression, and they make it one thing, right? Whereas in Linux, those are separate. I might create an archive and not compress it. That's the only difference. And also, those are graphical utilities, and this stuff is command line. Yes?
What is the difference between a directory that contains multiple directories and archive? Are they the same thing?
What?
What is the difference between a directory that contains other directory versus a archive that contains those directories?
An archive is not just directories, it's all the file, it's a copy of everything. Right. So an archive is a copy of everything all the way down. And it's a single file, which means I can move it like a file, I could download it like a file, I can compress it like a file, whereas I can't do that to a directory structure. It's a single file. Okay. A few other tools. What does free tell me?
Tell you how much free space you have per partition.
File partitions?
Drive partition.
Free memory. How much memory is free in the system? So it's showing me how much memory do I have in total, how much is used, how much is free, all that stuff. Uptime. What do you think uptime is going to tell me?
Tell you how long the system has been up and running.
What about updoc?
How long the document's been running?
Are any of you going to ask me what it is?
What's up, Doc?
Nothing. What's up with you? Nothing. What's up with you? Yeah, there's no updoc. Uptime. So uptime tells us how long the system's been up, right? And W. Now, W is kind of the equivalent of who on a lot of systems. So if I do W, we see that only I'm logged in. If I do who, yeah. So it depends on what system you're on, whether it uses W or who or both. But who's logged in? We've used which, where is, right? Have we used those before?
I don't think they use it.
Where is VI, right? So if I do where is VI, it searches the path and shows you these are all the places that I can find this. If I do which VI, it shows me which one am I using when I type the command VI. So where is shows me everywhere it could be, and which shows me which one I'm using. And what I could do is, if I do where is, I might do something like where is VI, pipe that to file. Oh, file won't take that. I'll have to do it. There's got to be a way to switch around. But I could do file / user bin / VI, and it'll tell me it's a symbolic link to alternatives VI. If I do file / user bin x11 / VI, again it's a link It's called alternatives VI. So I can see exactly where everything points. What about the one that I use? File slash, oh, that is one. Yeah, user bin VI. Like I said, locate is kind of another version of find. I just use find. It'll tell you to use locate in a few things in the lab, so use it for the lab. But other than that, you don't need it. TR. Translate or delete characters. You don't honestly use this very much. Mostly you use this to do uppercase to lowercase, right? So TR, square bracket, lower, translate that to upper. Yes.
Linux only exists in English language, right?
No, it has translations in other languages.
And in that case, does a TR translate from one language to another?
No, because it's character. It translates individual characters. So I can do the complement of different characters. I can truncate them. I can define all kinds of like patterns that I want it to match. So I could say if you find this pattern, replace it with this other pattern. So if I had like a text file, and let's say that let me give an example of something more complex you would do with TR. What was the big thing that everybody was working on in 1999?
They would translate the time code.
Yeah, Y2K.
Yeah,
Right? So if I got a bunch of files that list the date in the 2-digit format and I need it in the 4-digit format, I could define that in TR and use that. But like I said, that's complicated. We don't do that very often. Mostly we just use it to turn lowercase to uppercase and vice versa. That's mostly what we do. But again, I can use this with all these other tools. So I can cat things into it. I can get word counts. I can grep it. So this is just another text tool that we commonly use. Everybody with me? All right.
Well, how about script? I don't think you did script.
I did not do script. All right. Script is a way to record a series of actions. So if I type in script, it says script started, and by default its name is TypeScript. And what's the first thing you notice? It changed my prompt, right? Why did it change my prompt?
Because you need to report who is doing what on the system.
Because it created a new shell for me. If I created a new shell, that variable change doesn't go with it because I never exported it, right? So in creating a new shell, it changed my prompt. So now anything I do, if I do ls, if I do bunzip dummy.tar, right? Oh, bunzip2. If I do ls, if I do echo Heidi ho, right? Now, when I'm done with my script, I've done everything I want to do, I type exit, and I revert back, so essentially I have my shell, I create a shell on top, I do whatever I do, and then when I exit, I go back to my original shell. And now if I look, hey, there's this file TypeScript, and if I do cat TypeScript, it just prints out exactly what I just did. So it just has a record of everything I typed in and everything that was on the screen. Yes?
Is it mandatory for system auditing in Linux?
Is what?
Is a TypeScript mandatory in Linux as far as a for to audit every system?
No. script is there so that you can so that you can see everything you did, and in particular, usually you would do a bunch of commands and then take your TypeScript file and edit it to turn it into a script that you run over and over again, right? So you would get rid of a bunch of all the responses from the computer and only get to your commands, and then you could make it executable and execute that. Or if you wanted to, if, for example, Chris is having trouble trying to do a lab at home, and he's like, this isn't working. And I say, what isn't working? He could do TypeScript, send me the file, and I could see exactly what he did and help him with whatever he's doing. So those are the ways we use TypeScript. The thing I want you to understand is it creates a new shell while you do everything, and then when you exit that shell, it saves it as a file. Everybody with me? Yes.
So would you use this command like in the field,
Yeah, you'd use it. Usually, like I said, the most common use case is I have a series of tasks I do a lot. I'm going to make a script of it, right, by using TypeScript, or by typing the script command and then edit it so that I can just run it anytime I want. So I press one key and it does everything instead of me having to type in all 50 different commands. That's the most common use case.
So once you run scripts, you can't like search or grep in the actual file. It's not in the actual file, right? Like all it does is print it out. You can't access anything.
What do you mean? You mean within the TypeScript file? No, because it doesn't exist until you're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
But once you go back in, if you want to run all those commands again, you have to manually.
I would have to edit it so that it doesn't have all the other parts. You know what I mean? So like all of this stuff here, I would want to delete that. Now, luckily, that's actually relatively easy to do with a regular expression because it all leads up. It all has that $sign at the end, right? So I could relatively quickly go through and chop that up and then turn it into just the commands, and then just the commands I could make executable and run that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. A couple other utilities: Unix to DOS. When you hit enter on your keyboard, what character goes into the file? It depends. If we look at our ASCII chart here, notice we have this CR, right? Carriage return. That is represented usually with a /R, right? So that, if you're in a Windows machine, that is what it's going to do. Do you guys see new line? Right here, new line. New line. In a in a Linux machine, if you hit the enter key, it puts in a new line character. So they use different characters for that. Unix to DOS allows you to take a text file from Unix and translate it into DOS. So you might see this if you move a text file from DOS from Unix to Windows. You might see, hey, it's displaying it all on one line. That's because Windows does not recognize the new line character. It recognizes the carriage return character. You guys know what a carriage return is? You guys see the old movies when like somebody's typing ching, right? They hit that, you hit a ching, and it goes up one and then slides all the way back to the left. Yeah, the typewriter. That's the carriage return. It returns to the default position. That's where that term comes from. So Windows uses that character. Unix uses a new line. So Unix to DOS allows you to move files back and forth. That's what that does. Xargs. Anybody know what Xargs is?
Exchange arguments.
What's that?
Exchange arguments.
Yeah.
For standard inputs.
You are not wrong, Sammy. So it allows you to build and execute commands from the standard input. So this is you're going to do a little bit with Xargs. I'm not going to get too into it, but this allows you to do things like echo things into Xargs and then make that a command, right? And it also allows you to specify arguments to commands that are running, right? So it gives you a way to do that, usually from files. Xargs is very powerful. If you're an advanced bash scripter, you use it quite a bit. I just want you to know what it is and play around with it a little bit so you could recognize it if you saw it. To be a competent Linux user, I'm going to tell you, I hardly ever use Xargs. But there are times I'm like, man, I wish I knew Xargs better because I could do this a lot easier. So there are some times where it is very useful, but it's not a prime part of being a Linux user. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll play around with that a little bit in the labs. I don't think you're going to use it in the projects. You guys have edited files with Vim. Don't use Nano. And you guys know the lab. So the labs you guys are doing today, Administrative Task 4C using the Bash Shell 7C, and we have another project, and all those files are down here. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody at home, are you sad you didn't come in? Are you having fun with your family? All right. Boo. So, so that's everything we're going to cover today. Let me go ahead and